The first batch of Kenyans are evacuated from Afghanistan amidst political and security uncertainty in the country. Ivorian President Alassane Ouattara returns to the country weeks after fighting to survive the coronavirus. Plus, Egypt working towards a deadline of providing housing for workers in its new capital city. Thanks for joining us today on the program. I'm Joke Rogers. We begin from East Africa, where Kenya has begun evacuating its citizens from Afghanistan. 3 have already left that country, while 9 more remain stranded days after the Taliban took over the country. The 12 Kenyan citizens worked for international organizations, including the World Bank and the International Rescue Committee. Kenya, like most African countries, does not have diplomatic presence in Afghanistan and has called on the organizations which employed the 12 to evacuate them as a matter of urgency. A statement from the country's Ministry of Foreign Affairs says one of its citizens working for the International Development Law Organization arrived in the country yesterday, while 2 working for Action Center LA-FAM have been evacuated and are expected back later today. Let's get more on this. Let's talk to Kenyan journalist Cyprus Umbati, who joins us from Nairobi. Cyprus, great to have you today.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you. You say?
I say great to have you on the program today. Cyprus, can you hear me?
Can't hear.
Okay, can you hear me now, Cyprus?
Hello, can you hear me? I can't hear you from here.
We'll get back to Cyprus in a bit. Let's just move on to more stories concerning Kenya and Afghanistan, obviously. Speaking of Afghanistan, the sound of gunfire was heard on the streets of Kabul earlier today near a rally being held to commemorate Independence Day in the country. Armed men could be seen holding rifles in the streets congested with traffic. You could also see flag-waving protesters on the streets in several cities as popular opposition to the Taliban spread. The Taliban have presented a moderate face to the world since they marched into Kabul on Sunday, saying they want peace and will not take revenge against old enemies and will respect the rights of women within the framework of Islamic law. We'll have more on the crisis in Afghanistan later on in the program, but let's look at some other stories on the African continent. At least 47 people, including 30 civilians, have been killed in northern Burkina Faso in a clash between Islamist militants and government forces. A statement from the Ministry of Communication says at least 19 people were wounded after the suspected jihadists raided a military convoy escorting civilians on Wednesday. It said 14 soldiers and 3 volunteers from the defense militia also died. The army said government troops had neutralized 58 militants in retaliation and injured many of them without being specific on the numbers. Since 2015, Burkina Faso has been targeted by attacks that have resulted in numerous deaths and thousands of internally displaced persons. And Algeria has decided to review its relations with Morocco, accusing its neighbor of hostile acts. It follows an investigation into the killing of a man falsely accused of starting wildfires. A statement from the president's office says the repeated hostile acts committed by Morocco against Algeria require a review of our relations and the intensification of border controls. The decision was made in a meeting of the High Security Council assessing the damage caused by huge wildfires that hit the country. The authorities have concluded the majority were criminal acts. They accused Morocco of backing a separatist group suspected of being involved in criminal activity in the Kabylie region, including the killing of a man accused of starting forest fires. In the meantime, France has added Algeria and Morocco to its list of countries deemed high-risk COVID-19 zones as it battles a fourth wave of infections. With the new measure beginning Saturday, people arriving from the two African countries will have to undergo strict protocol measures such as self-isolation. Back in Algeria, awareness about the coronavirus continues, as do efforts at curbing transmission, just like in the Berber village of Ifiga.
Lowering down a street barrier painted in red and white, Lokla men checks people's temperature before allowing them into the Berber village of Ifiga in the hopes to contain the spread of the Delta variant currently causing a surge of infections in Algeria. Ifiga, like some of the Berber villages near the north-central city of Tizi Ouzou, decided to go under a self-imposed lockdown and to boost the efforts of medical volunteers to limit the infections and help ailing residents. Some doctors at the border village to decrease pressure on hospitals and especially to have them move across cities.
We prefer to see patients in the outskirts, in the villages, to decrease pressure on hospitals and especially to have a kind of lockdown to avoid patients going to other clinics or hospitals. We prefer to examine them in the villages.
If a resident is diagnosed with COVID-19, Lokla volunteers provide support by sending over food and oxygen cylinders when necessary.
They rescued a patient who needs oxygen, bringing him a cylinder of oxygen, a 5-liter oxygen concentrator. That was not enough. They had to bring him a 30-liter cylinder.
The Delta variant has caused a dramatic spike in infections throughout Algeria, with variant infections making up more than 70% of July cases. Despite raging wildfires in the region's nearby forested areas, villages of Tizi Ouzou have kept up lockdown measures and continued volunteer work. Algeria has so far reported 187,603 coronavirus cases, including 4,822.
Cote d'Ivoire's President Alassane Ouattara has recovered from COVID-19 and has resumed his duties. The presidency said the head of state tested positive for the virus at the beginning of the month. The president was earlier said to have been self-isolating after coming into contact with a person who tested positive. The office is not at the time mentioned that the president had tested positive himself. President Ouattara had encouraged the population to get vaccinated while observing the health measures put in place to fight the disease. Let's get back to our top story on Afghanistan. And of course, Kenya is one of the countries that has been evacuating its citizens from that country. 3 have left already, with 9 still waiting to be evacuated. The country has told international agencies that have employed Kenyans to help get them out as the situation deteriorates in Afghanistan. Of course, the Taliban is saying at this time that it means no harm to the people and will only treat people according to Islamic laws. Kenyan journalist Cyprus Mbati can now join us from Nairobi. Thank you for joining us on the program. I hope you can hear me now.
I can hear you very well now.
Okay, great. So what do we know about the evacuations from Afghanistan? Only 3 Kenyan citizens have so far been airlifted.
So far, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, which is coordinating the affairs, it says that there are 12 Kenyans who are caught up in the chaos in Kabul. And international which are now coordinating their evacuation to Kenya. So far, we've had only 1. Kenyan was arrived in Nairobi, and 2 more are expected with the embassies in Beijing and Pakistan, so that they can coordinate the entire exercise of evacuating those who are remaining there. And they're stating that the Kenyans who are trapped there, they are safe so far, so now.
Right. So has the government revealed resettlement plans for them, and are they expected soon?
Oh, well, so we've talked to the Minister of Foreign Affairs, and we no request from Kenya. Who are running away from the country, as it is the case in Uganda. Uganda has accepted to take 2,000 of them, and we understand the first batch of the group arrived actually yesterday. What Kenya is doing to help the whole thing is to help in logistics. The planes which are rather bringing those who are refugees so far, they're coming to Nairobi for logistical purposes, of that's fueling and other issues. And remember, Kenya is an operational zone for American troops who are in this region.
Right. So I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time on Network Africa today.
Thank you.
Let's move on to some other stories. To Ethiopia's Tigray crisis, the United Nations says the situation in Tigray remains unpredictable and volatile, while movement of Tigray forces in Amhara and Afar provinces continue. UN spokesperson Stefan Dujarric says that the humanitarian access into the region remains restricted and humanitarian operations severely impacted by lack of supplies.
Turning to Ethiopia, our humanitarian colleagues are telling us that the situation in Tigray remains unpredictable and volatile, while movement of Tigray forces in Amhara and Afar provinces continue. Humanitarian access into the region remains restricted via the only road through Afar region, where there is insecurity, with extended delays for clearance of humanitarian supplies and intense searches of trucks at these checkpoints. Only 30 trucks with humanitarian supplies can be scanned each day under the current procedures. But as we've been telling you, we need 100 trucks of food, non-food items, and fuel needed every day to go into Tigray. Humanitarian operations are also severely impacted by lack of supplies, cash, banking services, fuel, and telecommunications, transportation of ICT equipment. It remains prohibited by the authorities. We, along with our humanitarian partners, continue to stay and deliver to help meet the existing and emerging needs. As of yesterday, there are 457 UN staff, about 10 UN agencies, supporting the humanitarian response there. 29 mobile health and nutrition teams also continuing to provide essential services, reaching more than 50,000 individuals with medical consultations at 72 health facilities and 47 camps for internally displaced people.
Still to come on the program. We meet a Nigerian pianist in the UAE, encouraging Nigerian youths to shun crime and concentrate on working hard. Welcome back to the program. The Egyptian government is racing against time to get ready new homes for tens of thousands of mid-level servants expected to staff the new capital this year. The staff would be expected to work in the country's new capital in the desert east of Cairo.
Egypt is turning to private developers to build pricier residential districts within the grandiose new capital, which is designed for more than 6 million people to live in over 168 square kilometers beyond Cairo's outer reaches. The city is the most prominent in a series of mega projects and infrastructure schemes pursued by President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, who has said its opening plan for later this year would mark the birth of a new republic. Though government ministries are largely complete, other areas of the new city and transport links are still under construction. Some Egyptians worry it will be inaccessible and unaffordable for them. The government began building public housing in Badr city, close to the new capital border, ahead of the arrival of the first civil servants. Over the weekend, the president inaugurated 9,024 housing units in the now completed first phase. Another 4,704 units are under construction in a second phase. Head of Badea City Development Authority, Amma Mandour, says the housing is ready, so also infrastructure, electricity, water, gas and telephone lines. He said construction works initially began with 100,000 units and counting 4 people per family. Now this means there is housing available for 400,000 people, with the first units delivered in December.
Burkina Faso's second largest city is humming with poetry and music. One little bit to combat climate change. Let's take a look.
From inside a neon-lit studio in the city of Bobo Dioulasso, a group of poets hatch a plan to combat climate change by doing what they do best, putting words to music.
Making a song to raise awareness on reforestation is very necessary for us today because we're launching an educational program through our art called Art That Educates. We educate through our songs, through our writings, and a song can carry the message that would like a long way. And we really wish this song would travel throughout the world to sensitize more than one person on the current condition of life, of nature, and the ecosystem in general.
De l'écosystème en général. Le dérèglement écologique et géoclimatique.
In 2012, Rachid and 3 friends from the city founded the slam poetry collective Afrikanda, meaning African Voices, in the local Bambara language. They've performed throughout the region since then, having released 3 albums and 2 extended plays of poems that aim to raise awareness of social issues ranging from conflict to climate change. Today, the poets of Afrikanda are recording Hot Earth, a track they hope will educate youths in Bobo Dioulasso about why they must work together to halt the desert's steady advances into the Sahel.
Et la mer, et la terre, la nature ne se reconnaissent plus en elles-mêmes.
After years of trial and error, Rachid says the best place to reach local youths is at the city's myriad tea shops, where people of all ages gather to discuss anything from religion to politics to love.
De beaucoup de personnes de différents âges et dans les grains généralement on trouve les jeunes.
The tea shop for us is a place where many people of different ages gather, and there are young people who talk about many subjects. We thought that our subject could interest them and enable them to bring more to our ideas. So we're still working to raise awareness at many tea shops across the city, and as we're going along, we'll be able to reach our goals a little bit. Reforestation is something we really care about, and every year we try to reach as many people as possible from tea shops across the city.
When enough people had heard their message, the poets of Afrikanda decided to act. Rachid says the group routinely visits nearby forests that have been hit particularly hard by desertification. Last Sunday, they recruited more than 24 young people to join them for a trip to the nearby Quinima forest to fight back the desert directly. By the end of the day, the group had planted more than 200 trees, and that was music to the poets' ears.
Same issues here in Nigeria. The Sokoto state government is asking residents to support the 2021 tree planting campaign by planting about 2 million trees across 23 local government areas to fight climate change. The Commissioner for Environment, Mr. Sagro Bafarawa, says that this year's event focuses on promoting agroforestry farming with the aim of achieving a sustainable economic development.
Planting of trees is in itself sadaqah tujaria. That is a good deed with eternal reward. This is considering the immense benefits and blessings humanity and indeed all other creatures derive from this noble enterprise. I therefore appeal to all of us, all the stakeholders, business community, everyone, traditional rulers, religious leaders, to join hands with the state government and particularly the Ministry of Environment and Ministry for Local Government Affairs, for us to support the initiative of this year for the planting of 2 million trees. Last year, we planted 1 million trees in Sokoto State. This year, inshallah, we intend to plant 2 million trees across the state. I therefore direct the State Ministry for Local Government Affairs in collaboration with the State Ministry of Environment to immediately kickstart the campaign in various local government headquarters and various communities.
Other news, a Nigerian immigrant in the United Arab Emirates, Possible Okalma, is asking other Nigerian youths in the Middle Eastern country to shun crime and concentrate on working hard. The Abia State indigene, currently working as a security guard, recently found fame for his musical skills and is now getting help to build a career in music. Our correspondent, Mayowa Adegoke, has more on this story.
Like someone will see you and I know you, I saw you on Loving Dubai, you're famous.
It's a happy day for Nigerian immigrants in the UAE, Possible Ukaoma, whose musical talent has made him Dubai's latest viral sensation.
He's amazing. He's amazing.
And you were telling me you just found out about him.
Yeah, and I was honestly mesmerized. Like, I've been here for 2 years in the same tower, and never did I think like we had this talent here. Just walking past, getting coffee, just full on everything stopped, you know, it's breathtaking.
A fitness expert who gyms in the same building where Possible works as a security officer recorded and sent this video to local media. One post on Instagram and Possible's life story began to change.
Is it after 5 minutes? Different messages and calls were coming from different people that had never sent me a message. When I started going for like rounding to check the places in the building, you know, these guys going to the gym, they said, man, I saw you, I saw your picture, your video, you're incredible, man. I was like, are you serious? Even that same day, some guys came and they said, man, I want to take pictures with you. I feel so special.
However, his reason for immigrating to Dubai is nothing special. Possible, like many other Nigerian youth, came in search of better opportunities. Several failed attempts to get into his dream University of Port Harcourt pushed him to travel out of Nigeria in 2013. He now works as a security officer in a commercial building in the heart of Dubai City.
Security is a professional job in Dubai, which everybody wants to pass through and go for the course.
This role may soon change completely as new opportunities in Dubai's music space open up for the Abia State indigene, who started playing musical instruments in his father's church.
For him, there are two things that he could look at. One is doing sessions for music composers. So for example, if we're working on a commercial and we need somebody to play the piano, okay, so rather than get it programmed through the system, through software, we could have him come to the studio and actually do a live session, which is what we do with a lot of musicians. I mean, we have guitarists, we have saxophonists, people play the clarinet, the violin, who come into the studio and we do a live session whenever we need, say, that little magic, to create a track that really feels right and feels nice. So that's one aspect of it. The other is for him to kind of decide about his own music and his own voice musically. So he could do his own music.
The husband and father of one still wishes to get certifications in health and safety, but for now, he is following the call of music. From Dubai in the United Arab Emirates, Mayowa Adigoke for Channels Television.
Well, that's the program today. Thank you for watching. I'm Joke Rogers.